I have a picture that will show you my mom. Sits on my bureau beside my bed at night. My dad was who he was, but I think my dad was bipolar. I don't think it was just from being a World War II veteran, even though they had seen a lot, and he grew up without a dad.
Yeah.
His father got killed by a drunk driver on Sunday with a stolen car. Got run over and killed. On his way to church, he pushed Grammy. They were fighting. He was a red-headed guy, Daddy's father. He pushed Grammy, and Grammy pushed him back, and a guy with a drunk with a stolen car ran over him. And Daddy was like 12, so he grew up without a father. He had good men in his life. He talked about that. But I think still he was bipolar because he wasn't a person that could get along with a lot of people. My lot is like him. And Mom loved people. Absolutely loved them. She loved her kids. She loved her brothers and sisters, her brother and her 3 sisters. I have a picture of all of them too, taken back when Mom was probably 5 or 6 years old. And she's like the middle child. Then Linwood was someone that was already in the family. You probably have heard that story before. He had married my father's half-sister, Jeanette. He's buried on the Dawdling Road in Enfield with Jeanette and baby Rebecca. Jeanette died in childbirth, and Rebecca died the next day. And it left Isaac, their 2-year-old son. So Linwood would leave him at his grandmother's, my grandmother's, in Enfield, all with Phyllis Weber and Dexter, with a lot of different people, I guess, to try to, make a home for him. And he really should have stayed with his grandparents in Enfield. It would have been good for them, and it would have been good for him, looking back on it, but that's hindsight. But Linwood was a good provider. He, you kids all know him as Bumper, and he loved grandchildren, just like he did his own kids. He'd tell them stories that were so far-fetched. I mean, probably the 3 little pigs lived in a penthouse in New York City, and they took the elevator to the 3rd floor or 10th floor or whatever. I mean, that's how he was. But if we went on vacation, one year we went to Lac-Mégantic, Canada. The kids had read about it, and he was all for it, and so we had a car that didn't have a parked gear in it. But we went to Canada, took all the kids, there's 7 of us in the car, and went over to Canada, to Lac-Mégantic, had a picnic in a park, and there was a bunch of kids there that only talked French, but all the kids played together. My kids played with those kids. Language was not a barrier to them. So, anywhere we went, whether we went to Camden, one time we were in Camden, down at the Smiling Cow gift shop. Kids bought postcards. Going to make them out and send them home to all the relatives. Each of the kids got so many cards. Didn't cost a whole lot, but it pleased them. And that's what we did when we went on vacation. And while I'm making out postcards and putting addresses and things on them, the whole crowd gathers. Like my kids are all around me, and I'm scooched down on the sidewalk out in front of this gift shop, making them out so we can send them right there. And everyone said, "Oh, somebody's signing autographs. Who is it? Who is it?" Because you see lots of people in Camden. And the kid said, "Oh, that's no one special, that's my mother." Thanks, kids. But we had a really good time, and Bumper didn't like camping out, sleeping in a tent. He would have to sleep in a fold-out aluminum chair. He couldn't sleep just on the ground like we did. So one time we went down to Booth Bay Harbor, and We were going to set up a tent and stay out. We took everything with us to stay out. But it was raining. We had $83 and we were going to be gone for 2 days on a weekend. And it was raining when we got down there. And we said if it was raining, we'd use our money and get a motel. 7 of us. So we went to Moody's in Waldoboro, very famous motel and diner. And we agreed that we would eat our noon meal at the restaurant Saturday and Sunday. Other than that, what we had, orange juice, graham crackers, peanut butter, that kind of stuff we had in the cooler. Yeah. $83, we got 2 motel rooms in 1 cabin with a door that went between. Each room had a TV, had plenty of beds. So, the kids could watch what they wanted, Linwood could watch what he wanted. Perfectly happy, everybody. And people said, you went to Booth Bay Harbor, you stayed at Moody's in Waldoboro, now that must have cost, and you ate at the diner, that must have cost you. I said, we had $83 in gas in the car. And back then it probably was a lot of money. It's like a week's pay. But we went as a family. And right to the end, I mean, even after our divorce, he was a good father and he was a good grandfather. We had agreed that that wouldn't change. Caleb was scared of him. Caleb never really got to know him. The younger kids never really got to know him, like the older grandchildren. But, and Katie and Casey and Shaw, they didn't really get to know him like you and Mitchell and Levi. And he was going to go take Caleb out for ice cream. Caleb wouldn't get in the car with him. But you kids all would have, for sure. And Carla, after him and I divorced in '87 and he married Carla, she had terminal cancer. She lived 5 years. But Carla would take you kids on a weekend. You'd go there and stay. She'd take you yard sailing with her while Bumper was doing whatever, probably watching TV or something. Carla liked to go yard sailing. And she was good to you kids the same way. She was good to Linwood's kids and my kids. And all she had was Cindy. And I told the kids when Carla got so sick, I said, try to be real good to Cindy because she doesn't have anyone. Her mom's going to die and she don't have anyone. And you kids all have each other. And they were good to Cindy. They were good to Carla. But I'm glad that when Carla died and was buried over in Canaan in her family lot, I'm glad that they said that Linwood couldn't be buried in that lot after Carla's funeral. Yeah. Her sister Brenda said, she was a minister. She said that Linwood couldn't be buried in that lot. To me that was good because my whole life we never talked about dying or funerals or where we were going to be buried. Him and I didn't talk about those kind of serious things. I always wanted him buried with Jeanette. Grammy, Mott, and Marky are buried in the second lot. Linwood and Jeanette and baby Rebecca are in the front lot. And there's another space there. I think there's 3 in each lot. Right behind that is John's wife that died 9 years ago. And her mother and father are buried right behind that. Awesome. To me, it's an awesome situation there. And of course, I married Galen. I moved 11 times in 9 years till I divorced him. We lived the first year in my apartment on Spring Street in Dexter. The next year, we lived totally up to camp. The first year, everything went fine. He didn't have to pay board. He didn't have to pay any bills. Lawton and I were living there when he moved there. The only thing he'd fight with Lawton over ice cream or the last of the milk. And I said, Lawton is my son. You know, you came from Michael's. If you can't provide your own food, I don't know what to tell you. Left it at that. The second year, we spent up to Stevie Post Camp in Athens. It was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. I had Leah come and move me and go back to town. And from there, it was one move after another. It was a roller coaster ride. I lived with him for a short time up in Monson. He lived with me and Jessica a short time at the Blue Apartment. I lived with him for a short time in Heartland. I worked the whole time. He got disability. We married in '87. He got his disability in 1990. When we lived in Silver's Mills, I made him go to the town and get the rent money. And because the rent was in his name, one night when he threw a humongous fit, I had to put you kids and the dog in the car and go up to the log cabin store to call the police. They thought he was drunk. He was uncooperative. They just knew he was drunk. I said, he hasn't drank in 20 years. It's dry drunk. Well, it's in his name, so you'll have to be the one to leave. Well, in 1995, I got a divorce. He kept saying he wanted a divorce. We'd gone to counseling for a year and a half. He told the counselor he wanted a divorce. I told her, I said, have him get the papers, make them out, and I'll meet him in court. 6 months went by. His sister-in-law told me that he had already made the papers out. She'd helped him, but he wouldn't serve them. So I went right over to Dover Court, and I got the papers and made them out, and I served them. Told him where to meet me. I'd give him the papers. Yeah, I can do that legally. All he has to do is sign. I said, as soon as I have a court date, I'll let you know, and you can come and sit in court with me. So I did. He's all dressed up, meets me at the courthouse. I'm all dressed up. They didn't read our divorce. So I got up, marched straight into the front office, and asked the clerk of courts where my divorce papers was. I said, I have a paper right here that says my divorce is today. Oh, well, we'll look that right up. Take that right into the judge. She said, I'll back this up a little bit, Jessie Briggs. I'm going to back this up a little bit. We have another divorce that we need to hear. I had to stand and tell her what I wanted. I want my wedding rings. He has a wedding band that I gave him, and I want it back. It matches mine, and I want it. A few other things I wanted. I'm done. Well, when Mom and Dad had cancer in '97, and I gave up my work to come here, the year before, '96, I had moved out of his presence totally. I lived in Dover Foxcroft in a live-in situation, taking care of an old lady, and when she passed away, I went to work at Hibbs Nursing Home. But August of '97, my mom and dad had cancer, and I needed to come here, and I asked Galen if he would come and help. Daddy was a handful, and Mom was sick. So, yes, and for the next 7 years, yeah, I got the cottage in on Springbridge Road, got a title to that, was there for 7 years. Daddy died in 2004, and Galen packed up everything and moved to St. Albans. He always wanted to live near his friend Sonny. So he got to live near his friend Sonny. And I went over, off and on, went different places with him. I got custody of Levi in 2005, March of 2005. And he had court in Skowhegan we had to take care of. Levi did. When that was done, we was done. Galen came to my apartment, wanted to know if I would go with him to the harbor some weekend. I told him, no, we're done. We're done. This is it. And Mom died in October of 2005. I had Levi until June of 2006 in school in Howland. And I would ask about Galen now and then, or call him now and then. When I had cancer in 2011, after my surgery, I went to St. Albans and visited him one day. He'd had a lot of cancer, lung cancer, surgery and treatments up until that point. I hadn't seen him, he hadn't seen me. He was like a 3-foot man that scuffled along. Wore a cowboy hat that pretty well hid his head. And he lived downstairs apartment then. Then I didn't see him again until probably August of 2012. Went to see him again. My grandson Alec went with me, that's taping this today. And Galen was in the nursing home in Hartland. He laid on the bed, didn't offer to get up. In fact, he didn't know us. He didn't know either one of us. I smiled, I chatted. I took him a Teletubby miniature, which people had no idea where it came from because he couldn't tell them. He couldn't remember. Somebody brought it to him. Well, I took him that and, I don't know, something else in a bag for him. A card, I think, that said get well soon or something. And he asked about me off and on. He told me that day that he was going to get his truck and he was going to drive over to Charleston to visit me. Because he couldn't go anywhere without Michael because he couldn't think that far ahead.